The Relationship Between Human and Language by Mika Takahashi. These are the contents of this video. Today, I'm going to talk about the relationship between human and language from cultural, social, and educational aspects. First, I'm going to talk about human language. Human language indicates what we are using every day to communicate with others. It's a communication tool used by humans, such as writing or spoken language. Through communication, people are exchanging information constantly. In today's world, human language can make infinite ideas from finite parts to communicate with others. Human language is generative because there's a lot of words or sentences that create. It means that language comes out. As an example, there's an Old English and English that we are using today. We can't tell the origins of human language because there's no corroborative evidence. Across the globe, over 700 languages are spoken. But in today's world, there's only 200 languages that are used in our planet. A lot of languages are extinct. Language has evolved and humans have also evolved. There are different types of languages, some of which evolved from other languages and some of which date back thousands of years. Human language has properties: generativity, recursivity, and displacement. In displacement, people can talk about the past, present, and future. In human language, we can separate it into two types: speaking and writing. We can touch language with auditory and visually. So, language production has evolved with each brain structure. Humans controlled, produced, and dominate a lot of things using by language. These language properties or humanity features makes humans unique. So, I'm going to talk about the relationship between human and language from cultural, social, and educational aspects. The relationship between human and language from cultural aspects. Human language and culture are strongly interconnected. In order to learn one must have a clear understanding of the other. Culture is a characteristic thing that one group of people has. Like language, attitude, religion, identities, values of assumptions, beliefs, tradition, arts, and meal or social habits. This set of cultural attributes is expressed through language. Language came first before culture was formed. There's no culture if there's no language. Culture also affects the way we are interacting with each other in the society, traditions and values. Different language or culture leads to how we behave and interact with each other. Thus, social aspects has a connection with cultural aspects. Over time, the complexity of languages has increased, as has the diversity of cultures. It can be said that language evolves in such a complex way because it's related to culture. The term culture refers to the way people influence each other and grow together, which in turn shapes their culture. In other words, language is medium of communication. Language is indispensable for the formation of culture. Alfred K. Kroeber, who is a cultural anthropologist, said, "Culture started when speech was available, and from that beginning, the enrichment of either one led the other to develop further." So, we can say the relationship between language and culture is homologous but it's complex. Also, per language has a connection with culture. Each culture has unique characteristics, and at first, people use per language, including kinetics or tone of voice, to understand the new language. People learning it using gestures or glances. When you are learning a new language, you probably touched with the region or country's culture. Therefore, we can say you're interacting with other culture when you're interacting with other language. Both culture and language allow us to peer into the past of a country and its people, from which we can form our own ideas. The act of communication is its cultural expression within a particular community. Language, on the other hand, can be used as a tool to express one's culture. In fact, cultural ideas and beliefs are transmitted first through language. How we think, speak, and interact with the people around us is mostly determined by cultural values. In the same way, language influences our thinking. Culture teaches us how to interact with others. While each culture differs from country to country and region, it helps to form individual values and ethics. Culture also brings us closer to like-minded people, and the sense of belonging strengthens our bond to society. From these points, each language includes each characteristic culture. So, we can say different languages affect the way people think. We call this linguistic relativity. Based on this principle, to know other language is knowing its culture. To do this, communication is necessary. Your perspective about the diverse cultures around the world is known through your culture lens. In general, even people who live under the same society have similar characteristics can have different cultural values and ideas due to several different cultural factors. Because individuals have linguistic and cultural experiences within themselves. Eventually, different languages appeared in different regions and ways, and this leads to the emergence of dialects. Furthermore, different languages have been used by different social groups. The reason for the formation of dialects is that language is used in many different ways, such as geographically, socially, and functionally. Since Rita Mae Brown said language is the roadmap of a culture, it means many languages also have dialectal differences due to cultural influences. Understanding the culture will help you a lot in learning any foreign language, so that if you are learning a new language, you should better to know the society's culture to communicate with them in a good ways. In addition to language expertise, we need to learn how to interact with people in that foreign language, taking into account social and cultural aspects of that language. Actually, I started learning Chinese from this year because I was really interested with Chinese culture. So I started learning Chinese from February and took HSK, which is Chinese test, in May. And I have a plan to take the next level of HSK in August. I was very interested with Chinese culture, so I went to Nichu Yokokaikan, which is the place to get involved with Chinese culture. There was an exhibition and there's a lot of traditional Chinese things. Since I passed HSK and started learning Chinese, I understood some words and meanings that was written in that exhibition. On the other hand, I also had the opportunity to learn the Chinese from the cultural artworks that displayed at that time. And I also went to a volunteer work for picking up garbage at Ikebukuro. This volunteering was held by Chinese language school in Japan, so I took a communication using Japanese and Chinese with them. Chinese is my third language, and it was good to learning Chinese while interacting with their culture at the same time. So interact with different culture is very important. Ken Hale, a linguist, shares his own views on the relationship between culture and language. He says that when a language is lost, a part of the culture gets lost as well, as culture is significantly encoded in language. Assimilation and social differentiation and language. Both language and culture change over time. Thus, even if you live in the same region or country, you cannot assume that the young people and the old people living there will have the same culture and use the same language. Culture is transmitted in large part through language. Consequently, both are changing gradually. In this way, both language and culture are still changing and evolving. There is also the word multiculturalism. Languages and cultures continue to evolve, and with them, some of our personalities continue to evolve. By interacting with people from different cultures, we learn and explore many things. Interacting with them will also influence your personality and the way of thinking. The relationship between human and language from social aspects. Humans are social beings, and human beings always live in a community. This is because they need language as a way of interacting within that community. The members of the same are using language as a way of communication. According to Krashmas, language expresses, embodies, and symbolizes cultural reality. Language is closely tied to social relationships. Language plays an important role in many social aspects of our life, such as identity, gender, relations, age, kinship, and hierarchy. Three inseparable elements in a community are human being, community, and language. Human beings and language. Cooperation takes place only within a community. In the community, all members need help from others, such as buyer and seller. Communication events or cooperation among members of a social group works well when a means of communication called language is used. Social science. Social science is a descriptive excursion into social events, focusing primarily on use of language to appeal to humanitarian principles and human rights rather than scientific principles. We have the ability to control three important aspects of the social sciences: integrity, attitude, and communication. All three of these are directly related to language. Language and society. The view of the physical environment can be influenced by language. In addition to the physical environment, the social environment is reflected in language and often influences the structure of the vocabulary. The values of a society have a relationship with its language and can influence it. It's a phenomenon known as taboo. Taboos are formed from society's values, such as behaviors that are believed to be naturally prohibited. In order to avoid taboos, it's also important to pay attention to behaviors and speech, such as peculiar ways of speaking, word choice, and even rules of conversation. Relationship between language and society. Every social event is associated with a social aspect. Linguistic structures and behaviors can influence or determine social structures. Language is important in a given community and speech community. One of the characteristics of language is social. Next, I'm going to talk about the relationship between human and language from educational aspects. The role of language in education. Language carries an important role in many aspects of our daily life, not only in communication, also vast knowledge and in the field of human sciences, communicating developmental thoughts, information, and data. So, language is the foundation of communication. I'm going to talk and focus on language acquisition and language learning of educational aspects. Language also serves to communicate and pass on facts and knowledge. Language is powerful, expressive, and influential. Therefore, teacher and students need to be able to understand each other linguistically and to communicate ideas and information effectively in school. The relationship between language and education can be divided into three categories: learning language, learning through language, and learning about language. Education of learning language is to learn spoken and written language, or acquire the knowledge of ability of communicative competence. In most educational settings, children have instruction to promote language learning. Learning through language. Types of learning language. For example, doing discussions or do reading or writing tasks. Learning about language. Example, learning about grammar and spelling or learning of second or third language. Scaffolding. Scaffolding is the process by which teachers and students interact with each other through communication using language. Other practices in classrooms and other settings familiar to us are teacher imitation and student response. Lastly, language has a strong connection with cultural, social, and educational aspects, and human and language are strongly intertwined. Language is one of the things that makes us human. It's important to communicate with people through language. Thank you for your listening.